Shirley here with Sirius Dallas Moon. This is Jupiter hour, Saturn day, and the ascendant is conjoining the moon in Leo. And midheaven, ruled by Venus. Venus is 24 degrees Gemini, Mercury retrograde in Leo. So, as the Sun is separating from an opposition to Pluto, I want to dedicate some time to some astrology stuff that might be coming up for some people. And we are at a certain trajectory where if in the past people could just book a reading or, oh, hello there, sweet kittens. If in the past people could just book a reading or go to a forum and ask a basic question and then perhaps book a reading, then because of what I talked about previously in my work in general, those trajectories become less and less available. And this is why I want to put some information out there, because people might find that incredibly useful. So this one has to do, it's a concept from relational astrology, but I'm going to expand on what it means in general. There are certain transits of the nodes. One is nodal return, which happens every 18 years. And the other one is nodal reversal, which happens at about between 9 to 12 years. Those transits are very, very powerful because on the line of the trajectory we do as people, they matter a lot. And when it comes to relational astrology, the North Node in a person's chart also carries significations in some cases of their potential partners. So let's take as an example, I have a North Node in the 4th house with Chiron, Rohini Nakshatra in Gemini, and the ruler is in the 2nd house in Aries, ruled by 22 Mars. That is pretty much an all-encompassing. And Aries is crossing to my ruler of the 4th and 7th. So topics of cloning, reptilians, extra chromosome, nature and nurture, political assassination prevention, cult-affiliated stuff, okay? All those things, as I mature into my North Node, begin to come up in my life to be resolved. So for the people that have a transition, and it could be in the beginning of the 40s, you have a Rahu maturation, which means it's kind of like you're expected to tend to that. Okay, you're expected to tend to that, and the transitions that are to do with those nodes, particularly the nodal reversal and the nodal return, it's not that they are life-changing, because they're actually meant to take you on the trajectory of your life. And in many cases, people revisit certain situations in a new light, understand more about those things that perhaps happened to them in the past, or maybe something that, that maybe something that they came from. And they're very fated things, because it's the nodal. The nodes are about eclipses, and eclipses are fated events. So let's talk about the nodal return, okay? And that's the first. The nodal return, for many, it can be about maturing into where you're supposed to tend to in life, while not forgetting where you came from. If Ketu is about purging the materialization of the topic, And that is indeed a very sensitive thing because it's intricate, okay? It's not like we completely purge what we did, but it's moving on from the materialization of one topic to another. And with Ketu, we take with us whatever we learned from that process. So let's say I have Ketu in the 10th house, and so if in early on in life I would be very career oriented, now I'm looking into, actually around my nodal return, I posed the question on my Spirit of Matter channel saying I want to succeed happy. Happiness is a part of the significations of the 4th house, where I have a Chiron, okay? So a wound about being genuinely and authentically happy. And if I take it on the nodal return, it was tending to all these topics, and I don't even say that I swept them under the rug because I didn't, and then seeing another part, another trajectory, another facet of what has been affecting that, while materializing or making steps to materialize matters of the 4th house. For example, being happy. Okay, people like it's the grave, it's death, it's this, it's that. It's also a personal happiness. So the nodal return is going from where we've been, where we've materialized, into what we haven't done yet. And for many people, upon their nodal return, it's age 18, age 36. And upon these transits, what they may find themselves in is there is a new set of problems. They begin to materialize, they begin to wrap up a certain materialization for the coming chapter of the old problems. And with that knowledge, they begin to apply. And they begin to apply that knowledge on a new set of problems. And that's a set of problems that they never dealt with before. This is why it also a telltale about the life partner, because that set of problems is something that they're going to have a partner that's dealing with things that are relevant to that, or in some relations that have dealt with that, and is actually purging the materialization of dealing with those problems. But I'll talk about that later. And so, as they delve into this new set of problems, what you need to remember upon your Rahu maturation and upon your, and I'm going through Rahu maturation myself, okay? What you need to remember is that you are a set of new eyes on an old problem. And that means that while people in that topic, it's not like they don't have things to teach you, but you're meant to innovate where your Rahu is. You think about intergenerational problems, okay? Think about the boomers not understanding Gen Zers and why they don't even think that they could ever own a house. Okay, or people not understanding, hey, why do these people don't want to work? Well, those younger generations, they've been exposed to things that only in a crisis you will see that your 401k is not aligning. In Israel, we had a lady that was a finance influencer, and she never claimed for credentials of any other than finance influencer. She never claimed to be a professional about finances and so on and so forth. But she was holding a big trajectory then. She was invested in weapon industries. And she said she's sleeping well around that. And during the Iran crisis, what happened to her, she lost her mom, holding her baby in a safety room a couple of buildings next to her, a missile falls, and she says, fuck it. I don't feel like financial freedom is something that I want to talk about right now. And so you can think about this type of crisis where leaning on the old ancient trajectory, okay, don't listen to the moods of the market and so on. And then the moods of the market are your parent dying, a building next to you falls while you're trying to keep a baby sheltered from all those moods of the markets that you're invested in. Okay, that's the weapon industry. Not making easy life for NATO. It's Chiron around NATO's Rahu. And so when it comes to the Rahu maturation, it's true that other people have information or went through trajectories that you didn't because you've never done that before. At the same time, you are the next generation that will do things differently. Now, depending on what your Rahu is about, you're continuing on the trajectory of other people, and you may not even know that. Okay? So, Rahu returns. Rahu maturation is where you set foot in that new territory, and now it's fated for you to begin to apply what you take from where Ketu is. For me right now, I can feel how all the things that I've done since high school, and even in the spirit of matter, begin to assemble. They begin to assemble as I deal with very practical day-to-day problems. Going even to the episode I did about Team for Town, I was unhappy with a capital U. Okay, I was unhappy. So much so, and only when I tended to that political assassination case again, I began to feel alive. Now, there was nothing from the content that I was doing had nothing to do with being happy. Okay, it had nothing to do with being happy, and yet the Rahu in the 4th house, ruled by that Mercury in Aries, ruled by that 22 Mars in the 9th house, was definitely. Only now I understand that was what happened there. Okay, is me coming to my Rahu maturation with Uranus in the 4th house, Uranus opposition, going over my Chiron and so on. But that usually happens together. Uranus opposition sign is usually together in the same segment of years with the Rahu maturation. So this is not about forgetting journalism that I done at high school. It's not. It's actually about remembering dreams that I had. It's not about forgetting why did I not take the next step with a certain line of career, but actually about understanding. Okay, what would that entail at that time? Well, these sets of problems I deal through the opposite house. So for everybody, that's going to be different trajectory. But the Rahu and Ketu journey is not about forgetting where you came from, but applying that wisdom on that new trajectory while keeping yourself fresh to learn new things, while understanding that you would need to listen to yourself more than to your advisors, and yet it's not about not listening to others, but actually about understanding that, very simply put, there is a reason that those people dealt with things and brave things up until this point, and you are the next step. Now, with the Rahu maturation, it is inevitable that you begin to understand which giant shoulders you're leaning on. And for many people, that is the difficulty with Rahu, because it's stepping into our greatness and understanding that the step forward that we take what is it extending? And that can be, that is why Rahu is so associated both with Saturn, which is where we're meant to incarnate, and with, even for some people, a sense of psychosis, because most people never have a preparation to the fact that to investors, to investors, and in the spite of of the investors, they are meant to take the next step forward. They say life begins at 40 for a reason. And not all the people that do great things are visible. And what you innovate on, regardless of where your Rahu is, has a certain trajectory that expands on the entire human endeavor. So it's where you step in to become a part of humanity more so than before, and at the same time letting a lot of people down, people that invested in you, people that looked up to you, people that had great expectations, because that's a part of the trajectory of innovation. And then surprising others. So with that segment in your life, partnership may arrive. And you think about Rahu maturation, yes, it's happening only in 41, 42. And yes, it always has to do with partnerships as well, because we need to be ourselves to have a partner. And for many people, that is a part of the midlife crisis that can, in some cases, not all cases, cause separations, because for some people, the partner that you've been with up until now is not the partner you take along with that trajectory. Okay? I'm going to readdress that after I'll address the nodal reversals. So nodal reversal basically means that what you're materializing at this transit, at this 1 to 3 year segment, has to do with what you've let go of materializing. Okay, so for example, in 2030, I will have nodal reversal, and Rahu will be in my 10th house. So I will be almost moving to my 50s, and usually Ketu is something that you, by 48, are pretty much, well, that depends. I mean, I do have a midheaven in the 10th house. But that is something that you're pretty much moving forward to, or taking with you to the next part in your life. And but in the segment of the 2-3 years of the nodal reversal, you are materializing again in that house that you've learned to let go of. Okay, so what that means is that you also might meet the relations and relationships and partnerships that are compatible with that. It's very difficult to stay traditional when you learn about astrology. Okay? Very difficult to stay traditional when you understand the depth of things and how our individual life trajectory across cultures is something that is dynamic. And there are certain things that we understand at one point and we need to go back to and understand from another perspective. So the nodal reversal, you might meet with people that are either going where you came from, same with nodal return, or are coming from where you're going. And just like the Rahu return, you're still going to have to make it your own thing, not by force, but it's going to be a natural course of events that both of you innovate on where the other is coming from. And being open to that innovation is a part of staying up to speed with life itself. Okay, just like this morning I did Assassination of Theo van Gogh, none of the traditional degrees. But I could very easily delineate at least a part of that based on the other knowledge that I've acquired. So if I would just stay stagnant with, the one teaching that I enhanced on of Nikola Stojanovic, I would just be, well, I don't know how to look at that. But it's like, lo and behold, I do, because that to begin with was one perspective amongst many perspectives. And this is a part of, okay, when you think about Rahu that is now squaring my nodes, is looking at things that might be even conflicting with the other view. Here we had a chart with no 22, 11, 18 degrees, and yet there was assassination. You see the square here. It also had Ketu to my sun, which is ego death. So if I was not I have a lot of retrograde planets, which is a huge leverage when it comes to being able to let go of dogma. Okay, so for that reason, very likely it was easier for me to not have to go through this serious ego death crisis and not knowing how to explain things. It's like, hey, the degrees was one mark. There are more. There are more, and this is where you can begin to expand on your previous knowledge. So both in the Rahu return and in the Rahu reversal, you expand, you let go of what you learned, and then you learn something new that is complementary, albeit sometimes contradicting, and that can also happen with the square Rahus, okay, the square axis. So let's say I have the 20-30 axis, which is Sagittarius and Gemini, so the square axis is right now Virgo and Pisces. And this is, that's another thing, okay, that people are dealing with. Now let's talk about those relationships a little bit. First of all, if you have the same Rahu with the person, there may be age gap and there may not be age gap, but it means that both of you are going along pretty much the same trajectory. Okay, you're purging one thing and going and materializing another, and you are two voices on what is the new. So whether you're complementary, whether you're quite similar. Okay, another thing can be with ascendant Rahu. Okay, I had ascendant Rahu to one of my colleagues, and I found out that we would have tremendous synchronicities, and even the psychic attacks that we went through were almost to the detail similar. Okay, because they were growing to be me, and yet they were bringing something new to the I am. And so going back to the Rahu reversals, it's pretty much the same, because somebody is growing to where you came from, and yet they're not growing to be the same you. And that requires a lot of ego death from people, because it's preparing us to have children, whether symbolic children or those who will follow and be influenced by us, and have their own original ideas, because inherently some of the things that we brought to the table are no longer relevant in the same fashion. And some of the things are. And those people are just going to take on those things and move it with their direction, whether we like the direction or not, whether we can relate to the direction or not. And so do we. This is why the Rahu reversal is inherently 9 to 12 years age difference. And one of the relationships that you see where there is an age gap, and still that is not an inherently abusive relationship and it seemed to actually work, that can be the reversals, okay? That can be the reversals, simply because both people are assisting one another along the way of managing the Rahu and Ketu, but it's basically living. It's making a contribution and being able to let go and allow other people to make their contribution, even if it contradicts what we said or what we thought at the time that was true. So when it comes to Rahu Ketu reversals, we both learn to understand why is, whether it's a partner or the people that came before us, why were they thinking the way they were thinking? And by the way, Rahu Ketu reversals can also happen out of sign. Okay? So let's say the people that have Rahu or Ketu at the end of Taurus will have Rahu Ketu reversals still with me, even though my Rahu is 7-degree Gemini. Okay? And vice versa. So if you have Rahu and Ketu in the beginning of a sign, then the people that have the reversals might not be only at the same sign. And so on that trajectory, it is inevitable that people will need to discern, hey, there's a reason why those people think the way they do, and what they think is not the entire story, because it's not one-to-one. What they think is not the entire story, because it's not one-to-one with what the new generation or what another person has to bring to the table. Now, depending on how challenging it is for them to let go and do that discernment themselves, to grow themselves, might determine how successful the relationship is. And in the nodal reversal, both people go through that ego death. It's a fated experience. So for some of these people, it's very challenging. I talked about sexual sovereignty earlier today, and you think about how the old, rape normalizing perceptions had difficult to even discern that, hey, there's another discourse in the view, and it's nothing like Christ or Antichrist. And people have a problem with that, because it takes from them a certain type of discernment after they've already gone through the having to discern very deep intricacies themselves. So that's one of the topics that can be really challenging for people to let go of, especially for those of you that have Rahu in the 4th house. You came to innovate on the fundamentals, but not just of yours, and not just on your lineage. 4th house can be your country, the motherland, the sense of happiness, housing, death, even how you bury people. Okay, all these topics. And because you came to innovate on that, it is very, very challenging for the people around you. Okay, even though very likely, and particularly in the nodal reversals, they came from that. So they feel like, hey, I've already done the work. I know what this thing is. And then you come to the forefront, and there's this absolutely new perspective that is challenging to adjust. Now, if you have opposite ascendants as well, that might really be, okay, the mirror image of one another. But this is also, let's say somebody has a Rahu, bringing a Rahu to your 10th house. So for you, it might be, hey, you just up jumped a certain role and you've just made a huge progress. And there's this new person in the crowd, and some of the things that they do or say is kind of like an elephant in a glass shop. But some of the things are like, hey, that's actually maverick, that's actually genius, because this is a new set of eyes on an old trajectory and on an old problem. Now, taking it back to relationships. Why is Rahu is a telltale also about the people we will have as partners? And this is where a partnership is about sharing a life with someone. And to the level that people do that is the partners that they're having. For example, if I talk about military stuff, intelligence stuff, and so on, the people that have been in relationships in those trajectories usually had to hide a lot, not only from another, but also from themselves. And I come from a Pluto Scorpio generation that have a lot of ups and downs, but it also has this, hey, we are purging that. Hey, I actually want to be happy. I want to succeed being happy. Okay, not in the sense that if I'm not happy, it's a failure, but in the sense that I want my success to be fulfilling. I want to be truly happy in my life. And it's not going about that, trad wife or home husband, trajectory, nor is it going about career the same way that my predecessors, Neanderthals, did, okay? So, of course, that affects the telltale of who are the partners, because for many people, it just means doing life differently. It's not just about who you live with, but how do you do life separately and together? And the best partnerships are the ones that are truly complementary of the life trajectory. That there's actually something here that's not keeping us stagnant. And this is why for some people it can be more than one partner. Or at the beginning of their 40s, they may be having what people call affairs and cheating, but it's absolutely not. They're stepping into their Rahu, and there are more people that begin to have either an affinity or something that they learn from. And because that has so much to do with Kundalini, okay, with life energy, that can be both sexual and not sexual, romantic and not romantic, okay? But a partnership is a partnership. Whether it's a business partnership, sometimes it can be even an enemies, because they need to go through an ego death, even of the way we view enemies. Okay, so sometimes people see another as their vehement opposer, opposition, and so on. It's like, well, that person is just growing in a trajectory where to integrate that, you would need to go to certain ego death, but not entire. And the discernment of where the I am, where the you are, what do you bring to the table, what do I bring to the table, particularly when both are on a life-changing trajectory, can be very unnerving. And so people can have these quarrels and and agitation and instability around that, um, and act up. Okay, this is where people can act up, um, but it's not about giving up who you are, it's about growing. More to say about this. The nodes in our relationships in general are life enhancing and very important and very dynamic. Um, and yet, the more that they are a part of our life trajectory in relations, the more intense this topic can feel, because running into or embarking into Rahu phases, Rahu returns, as well as, and Rahu is not just where the house is, it can also be the ruler of, okay? So let's say you have Rahu, I don't know, in the ninth house, and it's Mars, but Mars is in the seventh house. But let's say that Mars is in Pisces, okay? And so whenever the nodes are going to be with Pisces, in transition, you will experience the same things. And those are things that we're asked to not remain in that stagnation. And yet the trajectory can be very frustrating and fascinating, because it's breaking through glass ceilings, but it's particularly challenging with the nodes because either neither of us has gone there, and everybody around us tell us that nobody came out alive from that, okay? Um, or somebody's been there, and the scar on the neck is a telltale of why they're not continuing on that trajectory in a more visible way now, and you push them on the same place where they got the scar on the neck. Okay, so that can be beyond frustrating for both, and yet there's a glass ceiling to break, yet we cannot stay stagnant. Even though there's a scar on the neck and there's a record history of whatnot, things cannot stay stagnant. And this is where both people can feel like the other person is turning at. When I had my Rahu return, I had a person that has a Rahu, a colleague actually that has a Rahu to my seventh, really challenging the topics in me from having children, and they were becoming a father at that time. Not let alone the fact that it was all is not as telepathy, okay? So channeling. So they were challenging every single aspect where I've given up on relationships. So they were challenging that. Children, okay? And then I, in return, challenged their fundamental core essence of the what and how they do for a living, including the fact that they have children along the way. Okay, so and all of that in modes of transmissions that are very astrological. Okay, to put it that way. So this is where both people have gone through enough when it comes to that topic, and then both people push the envelope on where a person has been literally almost dead. And it's both people. That's the challenge of the Rahu Ketus. That's the challenge of the eclipse nodes. That's the challenge of pushing the envelope. And the thing is that you cannot say, okay, now you have to toss aside everything you learned, because it's not the truth. And at the same time, it both is the truth and not the truth. And that discerning pattern is very, very challenging. because some of the older people have new things to show us that we're not aware of or that was lost in time. And then the fact that we are interested, okay, the fact that we are tending to that, and then the way that we tend to that, of course it's going to be different. And some of these people say, well, no, I did the exact same thing in the exact same way. Well, the stars were different stars back then. So there are many things in the trajectory that change, where there was a window of opportunity that opened up for some and not for others, and then a window of opportunity that opens, okay, on another trajectory. And that's the pushing the envelope that happens with those nodes, and those nodes are connected to everybody's relationships and partnerships. So for many of you, this is a question that comes up. People are wondering, should I try something new? Is it a good time to, and it's not necessarily have to do with relationship directly, but because because it's not about the relationship. The relationship is very important because of the deadness that it is. Okay, because if you think about what is a good relationship with someone, oh, that person was a person I grew with. That person was a person I shared a lot with. That person was a person that was there with me during times that what? That I was living my life and that I was experiencing new things, and that can be different for different people. Experiencing something new can be experiential and internal. It's like, oh my God, I feel alive again. That can be, and for some people it can be materialization. And some people can travel the world, not feel anything, go through a walk around the park and suddenly feel something. So this is also where the nodes play a part in the materialization of things and the letting go, the shedding, the materialization of something at the same time. It's kind of like what we think that enlightenment would look like versus what it actually is. With Rahu, now if we integrate the experiences of Rahu and Ketu, then we get to both enjoy that which is not material and that which is material. Because the materialistic, you can have the best luxury life and yet without being happy. And happiness does not necessarily have to do with a partner. Without being happy, you're not really going to enjoy that. And you can have the most supportive partnership and still feel lonely, or still feel, it's like, hey, the person is there with you, is this, is that, but what you're going through is something that's internal, and that can be very challenging as well. Or you're meant to break a glass ceiling in your life and you have the most supportive partner, and yet it's you that need to break that glass ceiling in your life. It's not somebody that, not that you expect somebody to do that for you, but in the sense that your personal happiness is your own journey, and that is, and that's a personal trajectory as well. So this is what I have to say about nodal returns, nodal reversals, the many ego deaths that they bring, the many challenges that they create, because this is pushing humanity at large, but people on a day-to-day level beyond what they thought was possible. And not only that, it's doing that. It's just that meeting on, if you think about a meeting on a cafe with someone, um, discussing the political assassinations that of the people that came before you, and writing the next satire. Okay. While you're comparing charts, it's kind of like, hey, that looks like my chart. Hey, that looks like your chart. Great, let's write a satire together about the cult and stuff. Um, that world leader died when he tried to do a different bank that is alternative to what was. Uh, that kind of looks like your chart. That kind of looks like my chart. I was like, yeah, they died in that gruesome. Let's do it. and this is how Rahu in everybody's chart looks like insanity. Because to venture onto uncharted territories, it takes a certain level of what people call psychosis. And yet, if we don't do that, then we really become insane. So that is, we really had the ascendant Mars with Ketu, Jupiter ruling over Rahu, here in the 11th house. And the Sun that is living in opposition to Pluto from Leo, okay? Very visible opposition. And one that takes a lot of bravery as well. But this is the spirit of the time. So for many of you just don't have the access to just book a reading. And also, many of those who will give you that reading, they might be just the right thing for you, and they might be something that is missing. Okay, so because those types of readings and these types of trajectories are not really covered by the social engineering filter that is exposing people to the algorithm of actually exchanging money. And this is why a lot of people had challenging times with their business models. And many of them began to try and sacrifice more than they could. Okay, and when you try to sacrifice more than you can, in the sense that you try to give up on yourself more than you possibly can while desiring to be alive. Okay, if I take back at just yesterday when I was feeling beyond sorrowful, lonely, agitated, and downright horrid, and there would be no explanation to why I turned into a political assassination of someone that I didn't even know personally, or that I wasn't even living in that same country at the time. Why would that be so powerful? Looking at the ritual that assassinated them, why would I suddenly feel alive when I look at that? Where before that I was just trying to do a normal and ended up wanting to die. Okay, so so that is, and yet knowing that any touch on those topics is beyond pushing the envelope. um, so this is not something that an astrologer a licensed person could give you advice upon, because they're just either they're in a trajectory where they've sacrificed so much of themselves that they themselves need to push the envelope, um, or in that sense that are simply not available. And this is where this episode is coming to the forefront. Um, because most of you, even those of you that ask these questions, some people are even not allowed to answer a genuine answer because of how filtered the discourse is. When I came to my route, a lot of things that people who would talk about astrology would say, oh my God, don't say that, don't tend to that, or this, or that, it's not professional, it's not this, and this, act normal, and so on. But that is actually not the truth for the type of topics that I'm tending to. When people began to talk about narcissistic abuse, most of their therapists were narcissistic because they were brought in ritual abuse and MK Ultra and so on, and social engineers. They couldn't get their license, they couldn't get this, and they couldn't get that, and still they tried to help people. But nobody had, and this is where people stopped going to them because they were not yielding actual help, because the glass ceiling was breaking for where people would not do gaslighting anymore. And even the therapists themselves, and I knew quite some of them. I had a friend that I know from completely other settings. She was volunteering for the military and then learned psychology and so on. And she told me, I was in an abusive relationship being a psychologist. Um, so so even when it comes to right now that Uranus is doing things, okay, in Gemini, and Gemini has to do with trade and business. So a lot of people become astrologers by business, and that can absolutely bring a completely new set and setting for what you can and cannot discuss. Even the attempts to limit financial influencers, for some, and some of that attempts is kind of like, hey, those people are selling scammy stuff, um, but but another thing is like, well, it's just trying to regulate the scams, because JP Morgan can sell scams and do programs in high school that teach people how to do scams, and if they, God forbid, do something original, then either it's going to be plagiarized or they're just going to be skipped over in favor of the next toothpasta generation that is going to go suicidal with Bitcoin and FT whatever, in their Saturn returns. But when they're in high school, lovely, why not make a couple of billions on their name, and then have them killing themselves, where the money already changed hand and laundered through assets and whatnot. So that was the Bitcoin generation. Without judging Bitcoin, we can have a lot of good things to it. It's just another form of currency. It's just another form of currency. So, and yet, some of those regulations is also, hey, there are certain advices that push the envelope and look at finances from a different point of view, and astrology is going to play a great part in that. And regulating that, the more they try to regulate Uranus, the more Uranus breaks out of the trajectory. They try to regulate astrology, it goes it goes bunkers in a very literal way. Okay, in a bunker in Albania. By the way, if you ever wondered why Afghanistan was made Afghanistan, because it's a mountain area, and where the fluid hits, then people want to be in the mountains. So they made Afghanistan inhabitable for actual humans so that they can take over Afghanistan whenever, and live there, and take over that mountain area. So yeah, that's just another thing that is coming up. Um, and yet, for some of you, the reason that such episodes are good is because, to begin with, you are isolated from actually going to a reader that is not associated with one of the people that are okay for you to meet in your in the confines of your society, which of course limits the reading. I actually had a person that went through a tremendous betrayal because they were in Switzerland and they were running publicity office and working with Facebook and working with this and working with that. And they had a husband, and of course the husband had to be a narco. And so they divorced, but there were a lot of internal things that he just accepted about society that they weren't making the link, and therefore any advice that they would get from psychiatry to astrology to tarot would be traitor advices. And this is very true because they were surrounded with the social engineers. So they wanted to abolish all the consultation professions altogether, taking kind of like everything, and it's very humane and understandable. And yet, it's exactly that trajectory where, let's say, somebody is bound to greatness, and a person that is given consultation because they gave up on certain other life trajectories, and not because that's a part of what assisted them to build that, might be challenged in giving them, okay, that reading, because it necessitates a certain ego death. Okay. Um, And yet there are a lot of people that see people that look like they're sitting on the fence, and it's like, no, we're not sitting on the fence. We're tending to these topics that none of you folks tend to openly, because to actually have a satisfying career or a satisfying relationship or even a satisfying family or parenting experience, we need that dumb fuckery dissolved and untangled, where y'all just gonna tell us, hey, we tended to that, look at the scars on the neck to attest, we don't know what to do anymore. And I'm like, well, then we're not sitting on the fence as much as you thought we were sitting on the fence. So um, so the breakthroughs right now, Rahu in Pisces. So Rahu in Pisces, Jupiter is in Cancer, which means that the natal Rahu Cancers, okay, assemble. Rahu, Ketu, and Cancer, Capricorn, okay, all of them are assembling to such experiences as well. Um, of course, the Rahu, Ketu, and Pisces and Virgo. Mercury. So right now Mercury is in Leo, so the Rahu Ketus on the Leo and Aquarius are for this month triggered. Um, Mars is with Ketu, which reminds us of the Rahu Ketu that we had in Aries and Libra. What planets you have in Virgo, what planets you have in Pisces, that's going to rule over more more ways and opportunities through which these experiences can actually occur in your life. Um, and I have to say, because Ketu rules something that is also not materializing, it can absolutely mean and entail people that are not here in the physical. Okay. Um, with all that entails. So, that can absolutely be the case, and that can come about through impersonation, AI. They upload literally the nervous system of people, kind of like their consciousness structure, into computers, and genuine mediumship and channeling. So it's all of the above, um, and that's also something I tended to in my Rahu return. Yes, Rahu return, and then Rahu went to my third house, but it began with my Rahu return, and yeah, it's in the fourth house. So